Hello, my name is Lauren Gerhardt, and today I'm going to be talking through my data collection process, the things that I found difficult, the successes that I had, and some things that I also found interesting. So, throughout my process of data collection, I encountered various obstacles and successes both. Some of the obstacles that I encountered were the fact that my school district is extremely small. So when I was in the data collection process, there was not a ton of overarching data to support trends since we don't have that many students. At my high school, we have about 204 students enrolled. This data was from 2015. 2% of those students were Black, 1% was Hispanic, and 1% identified as having two or more races. At my school, we do have an overwhelming majority of white students, and again, the data collected in 2015 showed that 96.1% of our student population was white. I wasn't able to find any more recent information closer to the year 2020, but in my opinion, being in the school every day and seeing our student population, I don't believe that the statistics have changed drastically within the past 5 years. So, one thing that I found interesting was the fact that my high school during the year 2015 had 18 out of school suspensions. Out of those 18 out of school suspensions, 11.1% were white students, while the majority receiving out of school suspension were Black students, being at 88.9%. This data was a bit shocking to me because at my school, only 2% of the student population is Black. So the data shows that even though only 2% enrolled were Black students, the majority of them received out of school suspension. Another obstacle I encountered was navigating the other data collection websites. On the hidden cost of suspension link, some data tables were not available, and a page ended up coming up saying that either the link had been removed or they have been moved to a different place. Unfortunately, I had a very hard time finding this information and did not end up being successful in finding the missing links anywhere. On the National Center for Education statistics, that was also slightly difficult to navigate due to the amount of data that was there. The amount of statistics that were on the page was a bit overwhelming, so you have to know exactly what you're looking for in order to get a good picture of the statistics on that page. Analyzing the civil rights data collection base was definitely a success because it was super easy to navigate, and I immediately found my school's information simply by typing in the address and the district name. Having easy, simple access to data collection sites like this is useful in the long run because then we can use that data to study trends over time about discipline in relation to social economic status, gender, race, anything like that, children with disabilities, 504 plans. So I really liked this data site because it was easy to navigate and it gave me straightforward statistics that weren't difficult to interpret. Overall, the interviews somewhat aligned with the data that I collected. At my school, we don't have a ton of disciplinary issues. With a small enrollment, it's kind of easy for teachers to manage discipline within the classroom, and the students are overall pretty well behaved. Some disciplinary actions here and there for cell phones or talking out of turn, nothing super major normally. The data that I ended up collecting for this was from 2015. So it's definitely changed a bit since then. I've noticed, however, a decline in the out of school suspensions. This is only my second year within the district, but looking at the past data of having 18 out of school suspensions, that changed to about 4 or 5 in this past year. So I attribute the decline in out of school suspensions to the implementation of PBIS within our district. This was one of the questions that I asked in my interviews. I asked if we had any sort of initiative put into place to help diminish discipline behaviors, behaviors that would call for discipline. So I think PBIS has helped a lot, and we've definitely benefited from it. Some of the other questions I asked in the interviews were about restorative practices and how discipline is dealt with, either on an individual teacher level or with administration, kind of the how of discipline rather than the statistics of how many children are disciplined, etc. So, unfortunately, I didn't find any data on the websites about, the how of discipline. So this is definitely something that I plan on looking into in the future, on a more personal district basis. So I will definitely go back and look at old records and kind of talk to more teachers, talk to the administration more, so that I can grow my data collection that I have started. So once I collect that, it'll be easy to see the trends based on the how of discipline, which students it's specifically happening to, who administers it, etc. Other than that, everything went pretty well. My questions in my interview were more on the implementation of restorative practices, as I mentioned before. If children and students have a say in any sort of disciplinary action, if there was any other options rather than out of school suspension or detention or Saturday school. So the data that I was finding, unfortunately, didn't line up with those questions.